If you've ever wondered about what your dog is actually thinking, this video is going to be for you. We're going way beyond obedience in this one. We're going to talk about the psychology behind the behavior. We'll talk about how dogs learn, why they make certain decisions, what motivates them, and some of the most common myths surrounding dog behavior. The better that you understand how your dog actually thinks will make training your dog so much easier. It's going to lower the frustration for you and for your dog, and it's going to make this whole process so much more fun. This mini crash course video will definitely get you training and leading your dog in the right direction. At any point in this video, if anything doesn't click or doesn't make sense or you have a question, drop a comment and I will answer it. Class is now in session. Let's go. One of the biggest mistakes that dog owners make is thinking that their dog thinks like a human, because they don't, and it's not even close. And honestly, this might be the single biggest reason as to why people struggle so much with their dog. Because when you treat a dog like a human, you're going to misunderstand almost everything they do. Now, I specialize in working with dogs that struggle with behavioral issues such as anxiety, fear, aggression, reactivity, and resource guarding. And one thing I can tell you is that most behavioral problems start making so much more sense when you stop looking at things through a human lens and you start looking at them through a dog lens. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how dogs actually learn. Because once you understand this, training gets easier, behavior starts making a whole lot more sense, and you'll stop getting frustrated by things your dog wasn't even thinking in the first place. Okay, let's just get right into it. The biggest mistake that dog owners make is they humanize their dog. And I understand why a majority of people do this. You love your dog. I love my dogs too. But loving your dog and treating them like a human are two separate things. People are constantly thinking that their dogs are being stubborn, their dogs are being spiteful, their dogs are being jealous, they're trying to get revenge, or they're trying to make their life difficult. Meanwhile, the dog is out here not thinking any of that. Your dog is a dog. It's not a furry little person. And the moment you start expecting human thought process from an animal is exactly when you're going to start misinterpreting behavior. This is all because dogs live in consequences, not conversations. Us as humans, we love explanations. We explain everything. But dogs, on the other hand, don't learn through explanations. They learn through experiences. For example, you tell your dog,
"No jumping on the guests, you know better than that."
But in reality, your dog doesn't understand you because they don't speak your language. Your dog simply understands what happens when they jump on guests. If jumping gets attention, even sometimes somebody will pet the dog, or we start baby talking the dog when they jump, or we get excited, then that behavior is only going to get stronger. That's because dogs learn from outcomes. They don't learn from speeches. If instead, when the dog jumped on a guest, they were corrected and ignored by the guests, that behavior would stop like this. But one of the biggest mistakes that happens is people talk instead of getting clearer with their actions. Be honest, are you one of these people that's having full-on conversations with their dog? Let me know in the comments and why you do it. Dogs are incredible pattern recognizers. They are actually constantly looking for patterns, far more than people actually realize. Some common examples. Think about this. Your dog knows exactly which cabinet has the treats in them. Your dog knows what time dinner usually happens. Your dog knows which shoes mean you're leaving for work and which shoes mean you're staying home. Dogs are constantly collecting information, and once they start seeing patterns, they start predicting outcomes. And that's why consistency matters so much in dog training. Because whether you're intentionally teaching your dog or not, your dog is picking up on patterns every single day. Another very important part of this puzzle here is that emotions drive behaviors. And this is where so many dog owners and dog trainers fall apart, because they focus solely on obedience. But behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. Behaviors are driven by emotions. A fearful dog doesn't react because they forgot their obedience. An anxious dog doesn't panic because they forgot their obedience. Even a dog that's barking, reacting, lunging on a leash isn't necessarily being disobedient. These dogs may be frustrated, they may be fearful, they may be overstimulated, and they may be over-aroused. Something I tell all my clients is those feelings I mentioned, anxiety, fear, over-arousal, overstimulation, are always going to override your dog's level of obedience. And that's why behavior work, behavior modification, the stuff I specialize is so much different than obedience training. Because you have to understand what the dog is feeling, not just what they're doing. So then how do dogs learn? Well, dogs learn through clarity. Imagine for you if your boss changed the rules every single day. On Monday, you're rewarded for something. On Tuesday, you're corrected for the same thing. And on Wednesday, nobody says anything at all. You would be confused, rightfully so, but that's what so many dogs experience every single day. One day jumping is cute, and then jumping is annoying. One day they're allowed on furniture, the next day they're scolded for it. Dogs are black and white learners. They need clear expectations. They need clear boundaries. They need clear rewards, and they need clear consequences. Clarity in all of that creates confidence in your dog. Confusion in all that creates stress and anxiety. And that's why there are so many anxious, fearful, reactive, and aggressive dogs, because people really struggle with being consistent, staying in that black and white. If you stay in the gray area, your dog is going to struggle and be very inconsistent with their behavior. Something to keep in mind is that your dog is always learning. This might be the most important part of the entire video. A very common misconception is that your dog is only learning when you're doing obedience training with them or when you're in the middle of a training session. And that's just simply not true. Your dog is actually learning all the time. From the moment you brought that dog into your house to every single moment that goes on throughout every single day, your dog is learning. They're learning what works and what doesn't, what gets them attention and affection, and what gets them ignored. Most importantly, they learn who in the house follows through on what they say and who doesn't. Remember, every interaction teaches something. The only question is, what are you teaching your dog? Dogs are not stubborn. Dogs are not manipulative. Dogs are not trying to dominate you or make your life difficult. They're simply responding to their emotions, their environment, the experiences they've had, and the patterns that they've picked up on. And that right there is dog psychology kind of in a nutshell. So if you want to become better with dogs and have a better understanding of their behavior, stop asking yourself, what would a human do? And start asking yourself, what would make sense for a dog? Because dogs don't think like us. Dogs don't learn like us. Dogs don't process the world like we do. And once you truly grasp that, once you truly wrap your head around that, dog behavior becomes so much easier to understand. Can dogs be manipulative? This is one of the most common questions that dog owners everywhere have. And the answer is kind of, but probably not in the way that you would think. Because your dog isn't sitting there plotting against you. Your dog is not some tiny furry mastermind that's trying to take over the household. But they absolutely learn what works. And once they learn what works, they are going to keep doing it. Now I work with dogs of all different shapes and sizes at my facility, from small little Frenchies to giant Great Danes and everything in between, from the sweet dogs learning obedience to dogs that are going through serious behavioral issues. And you know what one thing they all have in common? They all repeat behaviors that work, because that's how learning happens. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what people mean when they are saying that their dog's being manipulative and what actually is happening. All right, let's get this out of the way first. Your dog is not plotting against you. Your dog isn't sitting in the living room thinking, how can I manipulate my owner today? They're not creating these elaborate plans. They're not trying to deceive you. They're not running some psychological warfare. That's not what's happening here. But they are constantly learning, and I think that is what confuses a lot of dog owners. To get a better understanding of this, you have to realize that dogs do learn what works and what doesn't. This is a key. Every behavior has a consequence. And consequence has a negative connotation, but it doesn't necessarily mean something bad. When you hear consequence, think outcome. Every behavior has an outcome. And dogs are unbelievably good at figuring out what behaviors lead to results. Here are some classic examples. Your dog whines, so you give them attention. Your dog barks, so you throw the ball. Your dog paws at you, so you pet them. Your dog refuses to come inside when you call them, so you break out the high-value reward so that they come in. So what did your dog learn in all of those scenarios? Not necessarily that they can manipulate you, but they know which behaviors get them what they want. And behaviors that work get repeated. Now let's talk about something that I tell every single client of mine. If you've been a client of mine, you know exactly what I'm about to say, and that's dogs cannot be wrong. And I know that sounds strange at first, but think about it for a second. Animals don't view behaviors through a moral lens like we do as humans. Your dog isn't out there thinking, this is bad. I probably shouldn't be doing this. Oh, this is wrong. That right there is a human concept and one that keeps owners stuck when confused when it comes to their dog's behavior. Dogs view behavior in much simpler terms. They literally think, did this behavior work? Did this behavior get me what I wanted? If the answer to that question is yes, they're probably going to do it again. If the answer is no, then the behavior will disappear over time. I know it sounds simple, but it really is that simple. And here is where dog owners will always get themselves into trouble. Sometimes the behavior works, and sometimes it doesn't. The dog whines in its crate. Sometimes you let them out, sometimes you don't. The dog jumps onto people. Sometimes it gets affection and love, sometimes it gets ignored. The dog barks, and sometimes it gets attention, and sometimes it doesn't. Now, in those examples, the behavior is still getting stronger because dogs are opportunists. If there is even a tiny fraction of a chance that that behavior is going to get them what they want, most dogs are willing to take that chance. Because every now and then, even if it's not every single time, every now and then, that behavior pays off. And that inconsistency is what creates so many behavioral problems. Be honest, what is one thing that your dog can do that will definitely get a reaction out of you? Let me know in the comments. Now, it's really important to discuss this part right here. We as humans, we think differently than dogs do. Humans will actively know that a behavior is bad for them and do it anyways. We know smoking is unhealthy. We know excessive drinking is unhealthy. We know that drugs are no good for us. We know that excessive eating and overeating is not good for our health. And yet so many people do these same things. A dog would never. Dogs generally don't think that way. Dogs are not out here sitting about long-term consequences for their behavior. They're thinking about the here and now. Dogs live in the moment. Did this behavior get me what I wanted? Yes, I'll probably do it again. No, I'm more likely to stop. That reason right there is why dog training should be so simple in theory. The challenge isn't that dogs are overly complicated, it's that humans really struggle with being consistent. Now, what's funny about all this too is that the smarter the dog is, the faster they figure out this pattern. Think your Border Collies, think your Belgian Malinois, think your Australian Shepherds. These dogs figure out things really fast and they start connecting dots. They realize really quickly, when I do this, my owner does that. And once that pattern is established, they will repeat it over and over and over. Not because they're evil, not because they're bad dogs, or not because they're trying to dominate you, but because it works. Another thing I say often is that you said you wanted a smart dog until you realize what it actually means to have a really smart dog. Having a really highly intelligent dog requires you to be even more consistent than you should be as a normal dog owner. A couple of behavioral examples of this here would be separation anxiety and resource guarding. Think about separation anxiety. The dog whines in the crate. Owner comes over and lets them out. The dog whines when it's in another room. The owner goes and picks them up. The dog barks for attention, so the owner looks at them, talks to them, goes and picks them up, gives them something to do. In this example, the dog learns that barking, whining, and crying gets the attention from the owner. So let's talk about resource guarding. The dog has something of value, say a bone or a toy. The human comes over, the dog growls, the owner backs away. Or maybe the dog is eating its food. The owner walks towards them, and the dog stiffens up their body language. So the owner goes and creates space. Or of course, if the owner goes to grab something the dog has, the dog bites them, and then the owner backs off because they're not trying to get bit again. In that scenario, the dog learns aggression works, guarding works, and I can control this situation with my behavior. So are these examples of a dog being manipulative? Not really. The dog simply learned the fastest way to get what they wanted, and dogs would be fools not to do what works. So let's talk about the real problem here, and it's a pretty uncomfortable truth for many dog owners. Dogs are not being manipulative. Most owners are accidentally training their dog every single day. The only problem is they don't realize what they're training them to do. Because your dog isn't teaching themselves these behaviors. They're learning from the consequences that you provide. To put it simply, if a behavior works, it's going to grow and you're going to see it again in the future. But on the other hand, if a behavior doesn't work, it is going to fade and you will stop seeing it in the future. So the question really shouldn't be, is my dog being manipulative? The better question to ask yourself is, what behaviors am I accidentally reinforcing? Because that's where usually the answer to your problem lies. So in the end, dogs are not manipulative. They're not out here plotting against you. They're not scheming. They're not trying to deceive you. But they are incredibly good at figuring out what works for them. And once they figure out what behaviors get them what they want, they're just going to keep repeating those behaviors. That's not manipulation. That's just learning. And once you can understand that, you can stop being so frustrated with your dog. And you can start paying attention to the behaviors you might accidentally be reinforcing. Because again, dogs are not asking, is this right? Should I be doing this? Is this wrong? They're simply asking themselves, did this work? Yes? Okay, I'm gonna do it again. No? Okay, I won't do it anymore. You've seen it before. You come home and the trash is everywhere. Your shoe is destroyed, or maybe there's poop or pee in the house. And then your dog lowers its head, it tucks its tail, it avoids eye contact, and you think he knows exactly what he did. But does he? Now I hear this all the time. My clients will often tell me, my dog knows what he did was wrong, he feels guilty about it, she's giving me that guilty look. And honestly, I don't think that's what's happening at all. Now, I used to think this exact same way when I was just a dog owner before I was a dog trainer. And let's talk about what this actually is so that you can have a better understanding of your dog's behavior. Okay, let's start here. Dogs absolutely have emotions. People will hear this topic and they hear what I say about it and they're saying, well, do you think dogs don't have emotions then? That's not what I'm saying. Of course, dogs have emotions. Dogs experience fear, excitement, frustration, anxiety, happiness, anticipation, stress. Anybody who works with dogs, or honestly anybody who has a dog, knows that. But guilt is a very specific emotion. Guilt requires understanding what I did, why it was wrong, and feeling remorse about it later. And that's a much more complex process. So what are you actually seeing if it's not guilt? Let's use a classic example to dive into it. You come home, trash is everywhere. Your dog looks guilty. So here's the problem. Your dog is not connecting your current reaction with something they did hours ago. Now, dogs are incredible at reading people, better than you could ever imagine, honestly. What your dog is reading is your body language, your facial expressions, your tone of voice, and your energy. And they're thinking something is wrong, my human is upset, and I should probably be careful. And that is completely different than I feel guilty about the trash. So that famous guilty look, right? We all seen it. Let's talk about what that actually is. Your dog's head is down, their ears are pinned back, they're avoiding eye contact, their tail is tucked, usually between their legs, or if not, it's just very low, and overall their body might be low as well. And that's not guilt. Even though in humans, I get why I used to think this, and I know why everybody thinks their dog feels guilty because it looks like guilt, but it's not guilt. It's appeasement, it's uncertainty, it's conflict avoidance, and stress. Your dog is trying to navigate your emotional state in those moments. They're not sitting there reflecting upon their poor decisions. They're responding to you in real time. Before we move on, if you do come home and you come home to a mess, maybe there's poop or pee on the floor, their items are destroyed, or the furniture is chewed, what would you do in that situation? Let me know in the comments. So why does all this matter? Well, this is actually where people get into trouble. People walk in, they find a mess, and then they start correcting the dog, or they start yelling at the dog. Hours later, like this didn't just happen, this was hours later. And in those moments, even though you're frustrated, even though it's a totally normal, I get why you're angry, I get why you're upset, and why it feels good to release that frustration and feeling like you're doing the right thing by correcting your dog, but that's not what you're doing for your dog. Your dog isn't learning in those moments not to chew shoes, or not to poop in the house, or not to chew on the furniture, your dog is actually learning that my human randomly becomes scary sometimes. And that's why timing is so critical in the dog world. Remember, dogs live in the moment. They're not thinking about the past. They're not thinking about the future. So in real time is when you have to address a behavior if you're going to correct it or reward it. You can't give your dog feedback to an event that happened hours ago. It just won't connect for them and won't click for them in the way that you think it will. So let's talk about the real problem in this scenario, because it's not the chewed up shoe, it's not the poop or the pee on the floor, it's not the furniture that's been destroyed. Dogs do not wake up thinking, well, how can I ruin my owner's day? The real problem is usually that your dog has too much freedom. Your dog has a lack of supervision, probably anxious, maybe even separation anxiety. Your dog has a lack of structure. Your dog is probably bored, or your dog is underfulfilled, or one of those 6. So instead of asking yourself, does my dog feel guilty for what they did? Start asking yourself, why did this happen in the first place? How did the dog get access to the shoes that it chewed up when you were gone? Why was the dog unsupervised if they are destructive when you leave the house? What should you teach them instead? What structure was missing from the dog's life that allowed this event to happen? The answers to those questions are the ones that are actually going to solve your problems. So in conclusion, your dog is not feeling guilty, but they are absolutely responding to your emotions. And honestly, it's pretty impressive. Dogs are so incredible at reading our body language and our emotions in real time. So the next time you see the famous guilty face, remember this. Your dog is not thinking, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't pee on the floor. I shouldn't chew the shoes when my owners are gone. But your dog is thinking, my human seems upset. Something is definitely off, and I should probably be careful. And understanding the difference between that can make you such a better dog owner, because now you're focused on all the right things instead of whether your dog feels guilt. You can focus on prevention and structure and timing and supervision, and doing all of that will stop all of these problems from happening in the first place. Instead of trying to come home and punish something that your dog did hours ago when it won't even really matter to them. And don't feel bad if this is you, this is everybody before they know. I remember learning about this and feeling really bad about it because I've done this too. Everybody has done this. Everybody's made this mistake. They've punished their dog. They've yelled at their dog for something that they've done hours ago because we're human and we're frustrated, and that's normal. But if you don't know better, you can't do better. But now that you know better, you can do better too. If your dog growls, shows their teeth, lunges at you, or guards food, toys, objects, space, most people, unfortunately so many trainers too, will tell you just trade with the dog, or don't give them that item, or just don't take it away from them when they have it. And that right there is exactly how this problem gets so much worse. I work with dogs that guard everything, from food to toys to space to their owners. And let me tell you right now, this is one of the most misunderstood behaviors in dog training. So let's break down what resource guarding actually is, why it happens, and unfortunately how most owners are accidentally reinforcing it. First things first, let's be very, very clear. Resource guarding is natural. It is a very, very, very instinctual behavior. Dogs are wired to protect things that they find value in. That is just straight up survival. So if your dog does guard something, don't freak out. They're not broken, and it definitely doesn't mean they're aggressive. But here, right here, is the most important part. Just because it's natural and instinctual does not mean we have to allow it. Jumping is natural. Digging is natural. Pulling is natural. Chasing is natural behavior for dogs. Just like with all those behaviors, we still have to teach our dogs how to live in our world. So what is resource guarding then, and where does it come from? Resource guarding is not random aggression. It's a learned strategy. Your dog has learned, maybe since as early as they were a puppy, that when I act like this, I keep what I have. When they growl, you back off. When they snap, you move away and create space. And when they bear down and they guard something, they get to keep it. And in every single one of those cases, their aggressive behavior is working. So the behavior, the resource guarding, is getting stronger. Now, let me be abundantly clear here. Genetics and dog breed can absolutely play a role here. Some dogs are more predisposed to guarding tendencies. For example, a Cane Corso like my dog Booker are bred to guard and control resources and space. Or a dog like a German Shepherd who are naturally more aware, who are more controlling, and who are more willing to take ownership of space and resources as well. Now, those traits matter, but let's be clear. Most resource guarding is not caused by genetics alone. In fact, some of the nastiest resource guarders I've ever worked with are like these little white floofy dogs that you would never expect to be capable of such behaviors. And that's because resource guarding is created and reinforced by a lack of leadership, a lack of structure, and a lack of consistent handling. So dogs of all shapes and sizes learn this is mine and I control what happens. And the biggest mistake that people make with resource guarding behavior is that they avoid the problem. People will say, oh, my dog guards frozen Kongs, or they'll guard bully sticks, or they guard bones, so we just don't give them to them anymore. And that does not solve this problem. It just avoids that one particular situation. But the dog's mindset does not change there. Your dog will still be thinking, I can and will use aggression to keep control. And I promise you, most likely, that mindset will show up somewhere else, even if you don't give them that one item that they were guarding. It might show up on a walk where your dog finds something of value when you're not paying attention. They start eating it, you go to take it from them, and then they start guarding. They start showing their teeth, they start growling at you, or even they snap at you. Or maybe a really common scenario is something drops in the kitchen, and then you go to just grab it from your dog, and your dog starts bearing down, saying, you're not taking this from me. Or maybe something as innocent as they go and they grab a sock from the bedroom, something that seems like fun to grab everybody's attention, and then you go to try to take it from them, and all of a sudden they start bearing down, saying again, you don't have the power or the ability to take something from me. Now, in any one of those scenarios, when you ask your dog to give up something that they're guarding unexpectedly, they know that you can't make them do it, so they're not going to. You've never taught them how to give up control of resources or that they need to. Now let's talk about the most common solution here that just doesn't leave you in a good position as a dog owner. And this is one that a lot of trainers will push to down your throat, and it's just trade something for your dog, right? You can just give them something of higher value, and then that will solve all these problems. And before you come at me, yes, it can work. Yes, it can have a place, but here's the problem. Your dog will eventually find something that is more valuable than anything you can offer them. I've seen force-free trainers suggest this all the time, and then their actual advice in those scenarios, and to my question, what do you do?
Will you just leave the dog alone then?
Horrible advice. Because now you've built a dog that only listens when it benefits them, or will only give something up when the trade is good enough for them. And that's certainly not reliability. That's just you negotiating with your dog, which is going to just eventually make the resource guarding even worse. Some dogs are really, really good at this, and they learn quickly about the steal and win cycle. This is exactly where the trading strategy becomes a problem that you've created yourself. So let me walk you through it. Your dog steals something, you panic, you break out the high-level reward for them, and then you try to trade them for the item that they stole. And even if it works, even if your dog then relinquishes that item, what is your dog learning in that moment? If I grab something and guard it, the human's going to break out a high-value resource for me in return. So actually, I get rewarded for resource guarding. And it becomes a game. Steal, guard, reward. Steal, guard, reward. And that loop can be really hard to break once it's built. All right, Bill, so all that stuff doesn't work. All the advice out there doesn't work. So what do we do? What is the change that we need to make to help with our resource guarding? There has to be a mindset shift about this for both you and your dog. The dog needs to learn that they don't own anything. You do. Not through fear, not through dominance, not through alpha, not through chaos. Not what I'm talking about. You can accomplish all of this by having structure, having clarity, having accountability, and most importantly, having consistency. Because right now, your dog believes this is mine and I decide what happens. And that's the root of the problem for this behavior that we call resource guarding. Let me leave you with this. Just remember, resource guarding does not go away on its own. It'll either stay the same or it will get worse and spread into other areas of your life, especially if your dog keeps winning. If their strategy of using aggressive behaviors such as growling, showing teeth, barking, lunging, or even biting and snapping at you, if that keeps working, they're gonna keep doing it. So if your dog is guarding something, don't freak out. It's a very normal and instinctual behavior. They're not a bad dog and they're not even an aggressive dog. They are, though, a dog that has learned that something has worked for them. And if you don't change that, it's going to show up again. So the goal isn't to avoid it forever or keep trying to trade and bribe your dog out of it. The goal is to change how your dog thinks about control. So if you found this video valuable in any way, please give it a like, drop a comment below, share it with somebody that you know that might need to hear this. And as always, subscribe to the channel. I post dog training content 2 times per week over all things behavior. I want you to be here if you want to learn. I'm the Big Dog Guy, and I'll see you in the next one.